I am grateful to SSC Innovate for having this conversation. It has given me excuse to put on some clothes. I haven't worn clothes like this in like 3-4 months. So I'm really overjoyed. I didn't leave the house, but I'm all dressed up. So I am not a historian by training, but I am a lover of history. And I think oftentimes we talk about current events in a vacuum. We talk about them ahistorically, and we forget that there is so much rootage beneath some of these issues, right? Just looking at today, if we can talk about the gap between, let's say, the average white family and the average black family. Whites have 10 times more wealth than black families here in the United States. How do you see the history in this country connected to these two pandemics that we are facing today?
You know, when you start talking about COVID and the disparate effects around COVID, the reasons for the disparate effect around COVID is because of economic inequality, it's because of racial persecution, it's because folks live in substandard housing, it's because people are more likely to be diabetic, more likely to have asthma, more likely to have hypertension. It's because people can't socially distance in the way that we're being directed to do so because many people are living in apartments. It's about who's the frontline workers, which are disproportionately black and brown, who can't adhere to the policies about not leaving their homes or going to the supermarket once every 2 weeks and buying lots of food.
Needless to say, this has been a few tough months for Black folks, right, in this country. It's not new. We've been through things before, but in recent times, the frustration that we're seeing in the streets is not about George Floyd, right? It's about folks being tired of being treated less than, and not just by the police, right? It's about protesters giving voice to their anger. It's about anger with a little bit of sadness, right? Black communities across the country have been ravaged by COVID-19. And not only the health aspect, but also the economic fallout, right? It's about a series of attacks on people of color by police and by everyday citizens, caught on tape, right? We've seen it in recent months, circulated in the news, but it's about a pain through communities that have been suffering for decades. And
everything builds upon itself. So we know how the history and the system has created just the way that things operate. But some of the things that I face on a daily basis that worked against us was a lot of Black and brown people, rightfully so, have a lack of trust in the healthcare system. My thing is, having patients see a physician that is nice and friendly and someone that they can trust, that they want to come to the doctor, that they're not only coming when something bad happens. So you have this situation where no one really knows what's going on. The information changes every single day because we really don't know what's going on. And there's already this lack of trust.
Chandala, I want to ask, because there has been a history of redlining in this country, loan discrimination. What does that look like in New York City, or your sense of it?
Well, I don't think there's a way to circumvent that. I think what it boils down to is understanding the type of lenders that will lend to our communities, like CDFIs. You have CDFIs that are set up in communities that understand the struggles that a lot of entrepreneurs go through, especially those of color, when it comes to credit and things of that nature. Like at the center, for instance, if we see that your credit is not up to par to even refer you to a lender that has the most lenient credit criteria, we will refer you on to the Office of Financial Empowerment that will help you to build your credit up to where you can actually meet that criteria for that non-traditional lender.
How can we think entrepreneurially about helping our Black kids to make sure they get the education that they need?
Just like COVID impacted us disproportionately, so too did this digital divide impact us. So it puts us in a position where we may even fall further behind than we are now. So how to attack it, I think you got to be a little smarter than me to figure that out. But I do think that diagnosis is the number one, step one. We have a diagnosis. We have been aggressive with funders. If you want to help this child, the first thing you have to do is try to shrink that divide.
Armani, could you tell us what are some concerns that your generation has regarding entrepreneurship and Black ownership, racial injustice in this country?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'll speak personally. Before this whole pandemic, happened, I wanted to really enter the entrepreneurship world. I planned to launch something, but as soon as this hit, it stopped everything. It stopped the shops. I couldn't be able to print things. I couldn't be able to design things, and it really set me back a few months where I wanted to. And that's because we, depend so much on technology. And once everything happened where we had to close everything and we had to stay 6 feet away, it put us at a point where I couldn't begin to do things. Even my friends, he has his own business where he's ordered shirts and everything. But because of this, it's been set back months after. But this whole pandemic, I hope that we learn from it, not to,